Good morning. The second chapter for Monday, chapter 26, verse 12. This is the chapter of the declaration of the tithes and the various agricultural gifts of the Jew. And by way of introduction, yesterday's portion began speaking of, and it shall come to pass when you enter into the land that God your God will be giving you. You have to give the first fruits, and he goes on one mitzvah after the other. And now he talks about kischale, when you will have completed la'aser, tithing, eskol ma'asar tuoscha, all the tithes of your produce. When is that? Bashono hashlishis, in the third year. The third year is called, Shnas HaMaaser, the year of the special tithe. V'nosato, and you will have given, La Levi to the Levi, La Ger to the stranger, La Yosem to the orphan, V'lo Almona and to the widow, V'ochlu V'shorecha, and they will eat in your gates, V'saveyu, and they will be satisfied. So let's explain what's going on here. The agricultural cycle of a Jew in Israel goes by sets of 7 years. Within the 7 years, you have the first 3 years, you have the second 3 years, and then you have the 7th year, the sabbatical year. In the sabbatical year, everything stops. There's no planting, there's no harvesting, there's no agricultural activity. Everything is open to everyone. Consequently, you don't really have 7 years, you have 6 years. The 6 years are divided into 2 sets of 3. So we have the first 3 years, and then the first 3 years repeat themselves with the second 3 years. So let's look at the first 3 years, and then it mirrors itself in the second 3 years. The first 3 years, you have all of the annual obligations, which is bikurim, the first fruits, and truma, the 2% gift to the Kohen, and the meiser, the tithing to the Levi. All of those are regular gifts. The third year, there is going back to the first 2 years, there's an additional tithe. What is this additional tithe? The additional tithe is called Maaser Sheni, the second tithe. What is the second tithe? It's an additional 10%, which the farmer has to take, the produce, or the money which was exchanged for the produce so that the produce shouldn't go bad, take it to Jerusalem and spend it there on food and edible stuff that grows from the ground. Gather together friends and family, bring some poor people to his hotel, eat it, and that is called Meiser Sheni. Consequently, the second tithe or Meiser Sheni, meaning the farmer traveling to Jerusalem and consuming this money in Jerusalem, contributing to the economy of Jerusalem, learning Torah and basking in the spirituality of Jerusalem, this takes place in year 1 and year 2, as well as in its mirror set, year 4 and year 5. What happens in year 3? That second tithe, Meiser Sheni, is suspended, and instead it is replaced with Maaser Oni, with a special tithe to the poor, to give the poor people an extra jolt of income. And that is the third year, repeated again in the 6th year. Now, a person doesn't really have to take his tithes to Jerusalem every year. Sometimes he can save it up and make this trip to Jerusalem later. But there is a cutoff date. And here we talk about the cutoff date. Let's look at Rashi now. When you will make an end to the tithing of all the tithe of your income in the third year, says Rashi, this means Kishetigmer lahaprish masris shoshana hashlishis. When you will complete the setting apart of the tithings of the third year, what does the Torah say? There's a cutoff date. Kovazman habiur. The Torah fixes the time when we have to make sure that we have paid all of our tithes. Vahavidui, and the declaration where a Jew stands up and says, I have done so, now bless me. When is this? Be'erev Pesach Shoshana Harviyis. The day before Pesach of the fourth year. Let me give you an example. You have now, we're in the year 2009, for example. When will the income tax be due in the United States for the year 2009? April 2010. So that the year 2009 has to come to an end, and we have to meet with our accountant, and by April 15th, we have to file our tax return. Similarly speaking, the cutoff date is at the end of the third year, but you have till Pesach, till April of the fourth year, to actually pay the tax, pay the tithe. Shenemar, as it says, Miktsei Sholei Shonim Taitzi, at the end of 3 years, you shall bring forth all of your tithes that have been sitting in your tithe account. Now, how do we know that this is the day before Pesach of the fourth year? Maybe it's another day. Maybe it's April 15th. Nemar kan mikates. Here the Torah uses the expression mikates at the end. V'nemar lahalon. And in conjunction with the mitzvah of hakel, it says mikates sheva shonim at the end of 7 years. Linyan hakel ma lahalon regel. So number one, we know, just as there with the hakel, when every Jewish man, woman, and child has to come together once every 7 years, it's on a holiday. Afkan regel. So also here, the cutoff date for the declaration and the final payment would be the holiday. Imalahalan, in that case, if you're learning from there, perhaps just as there the holiday was Chag HaSukkos, the festival of Sukkot. Afkan, perhaps here also, you should say that it's the Sukkot festival. Talmud Lomar, no. Kisachal elaser. When you finish your tithing, Maisris Shoshana Hashlishis, the tithes of the third year. Regel Shamaisris Kolin Bay. What is the festival when the tithe season comes to an end? Zehu Pesach, it's Pesach. Why? Because Sukkot is the time of the harvest, but not everything is ripe on Sukkot. There are trees which are picked after Sukkot. So in fact, everything is done by spring. Nimtzu Maisra Shel Shlishis. So in fact, the obligations of tithing of the third year, meaning the third Hebrew year, Kolin, would not be finished by Pesach Sheravias, because you don't necessarily pick all the fruit of the third year by Sukkot. So the cutoff date is a holiday. What's the holiday after Sukkot? Pesach, Erev Pesach. Anyone, see, it's better to bring your tithe to Jerusalem every year. A Jew had to go to Jerusalem 3 times a year. But anybody who for some reason didn't, because of the Torah mandates, Levarim and Abayas, now is the time. You have to take all of the charitable obligations, get it out of the house, and pay up. Shnas HaMaser, the year of tithing. Why is this called the year of tithing? Shana she'ein neig bo ela meiser echad mishnei meisers shenagu b'shnei shanim lefoneha. Here we are in year 3. This would refer to the year in which we only observe one of the 2 tithings of year 1 and year 2. Shana rishena shel shmita, because the first year of the sabbatical set of 7, neihig ba meiser rishon, there is the first tithe, which is 10% to the Levi. Commission Nemer, as it says, when you will take from the children of Israel the tithe, that is the 10% that goes to the Levi. Incidentally, that is the entire source of income of a Levi. A Levi lives from that 10%. Shenemar, as it says, Umaiser Sheni, and then you have the second tithe, which is also the obligation of the first year and the second year. Shenemar, as it says, "V'achalta lifnei Hashem Elokecha." You shall eat before God your God. What does that mean? Jerusalem. Maaser, the tithe, the gancha tireishcha b'tzarecha, of your grains, your wines, and your oils. Harei shnei ma'aser. So we have two tithes: the tithe of the Levi and the tithe of Jerusalem. The Torah comes and teaches you here, Bashana Shlishis, in the third year, that of those two of the first 2 years, there's only one. Which one is that? It's the first tithe. Only the Levites' tithe of the first two tithes is conducted then. But in the place of the second tithe, Yiteni should give Meiser Oni, a special tithe of the third and sixth year, which goes to the poor to help the poor catch up. Shenemer, as it says, Kan here v'nasato la Levi, give to the Levi. Eis asher lei, whatever comes to him. Harei Meiser Rishon, that's the first tithe. La ger la yosem v'la, to the stranger, the widow, the orphan, and the widows. Meiser Oni, these are the people who are poor and financially challenged. Yochlu b'shorecha, they should eat in your gates v'saveyu, and be satiated. 10 lohen kedei sav, you can't just give them one grape. You have to give them something of substance. Mikan omru ein peichasin laoni bageirim. When a poor man comes to the threshing floor, you should not give him pachas less than chatzi kab chitin, half of a cob of wheat. I think I read that it's like the volume of 8 eggs. I think. Okay, so that's verse 12. Interesting, Balaturim, verse 12. If you look at the words Techala, Laser, Ace, Kol, Masar, the first letter of every word has the numerical value of Bechag Shel Pesach, the festival of Pesach. Verse 13, V'yamarta, you shall declare Lifnei Hashem Elokecha, before God your God. This is the declaration that every Jew makes. Erev Pesach of the 4th year. What does he say? He says, Hashem, Rabbeinu Shalom, Biarti HaKodesh Min Habayis. Anything sacred, I have removed it from the house. I have no more charitable obligations sitting in my house. Not only have I removed it from my house and put it on the porch, but V'gam Nesativ, I've paid, I've given it. La Levi, whatever goes to the Levi, I've given to the Levi. La Ger, La Yosim, La Almona, whatever has to go to the convert, stranger, orphan, widow, I've given to them, which is the first tithe and the poor man's tithe. Kechol mitzvoscha, I meticulously followed all of your commandments, asher tzibisoni, which you commanded me. Lo yavarti mi mitzvosecha, I have not crossed, transgressed any of your commandments. V'lo shachachti, nor have I forgotten. Or I didn't come up with any other excuses, like my dog ate it. No excuses. I did it. That's the declaration that a Jew makes before Hashem. Yamarto lifnei Hashem Elokecha, you shall declare before Hashem your God, Hisvade, you have to make a statement, a declaration, a confession, Shenosato Masresecha, that you have paid your tithes. Biarti HaKodesh Min Habayis, what's Kodesh, what's holy? Zemaiser Sheni, that's the second tithe. V'neter Revoya, there's another charitable gift, and that is the produce of a tree of the 4th year. We say that when somebody plants a tree, the first 3 years he can't touch the fruit. That's called orla. The 4th year, you take the entire produce and bring it to Jerusalem. It's similar to Meiser Sheni. Really, Medcha, this teaches you, Shem Shah, Meiser Esav Shal Shtei Shonim, if for whatever reason somebody held on to his second tithes of year 1 and year 2, and again, how could it be that you hold food for so long? Because you exchange it for money. And he didn't bring it to Jerusalem. This is the cutoff, Erev Pesach of the 4th year. The first tithe, that's what goes to the Levi. V'gam is that which goes to the Kohen. L'Rabbis Truma, Ubikurin, which goes to the Kohen. Lager Yosef Almona Zamaiseroni, that goes to the poor. Kechol mitzvoscha. A Jew also has to declare I followed the order of the tithes. In the Satim Kesidram, I gave the charity that I was supposed to give in the right order. Higdamti Truma lebikurim, I didn't give the Kohen's gift of Truma before the first fruits. V'lei Ma'aser l'Truma, I didn't give the Levi before the Kohen. V'lei Sheni l'Rishon, I didn't give the second tithe, which is taken to Jerusalem before the first tithe that goes to the Levi. Shatruma kruya reishis, because Truma is called reishis. Shirishayna mishanasa dog, and once it becomes a grain, it's the first gift. Your first fruits and your Truma you shall not delay. You have to follow the right order prescribed in the Torah. I didn't transgress any details. I didn't take from one species and pay my obligations for another species. I didn't take up the new crop and pay my obligation for the old crop, and so on. I also extended my blessing to you, Hashem, because there's a bracha that we make when we set aside the various tithes. So I fulfilled all of my obligation is that which, the declaration which the Jew makes in Jerusalem, Erev Pesach, the fourth year. Verse 14, Lo yachalti v'eini mimenu. The declaration also includes the following statement, that I didn't eat of any of this when I was in a state of mourning, and onan is a state of serious mourning. V'lei v'yarti mimenu b'tomei. I didn't put away any of it when I was in a state of defilement, because then it should not have been brought into Jerusalem. V'lei nasati mimenu l'meis. I didn't use any of these funds for anything related to funeral expenses, related to death, because that would be impure. Shamati, I have followed, I've listened, Bekeil Hashem Elokoi, to the voice of God my God. Osisi, I have done, Kecheil Asher Tzibisoni, everything you commanded me. Le'achalti ba'ini mimenu, mikan she'oser lo'einu. From here we see that an onan, a mourner at the most serious stage of his mourning, may not eat of this food. Whether I was impure and the food was pure, or I am pure and the food was impure. Where does it talk about that? You cannot eat in your gates, referring to eating when in a state of impurity. Regular food you can eat in a state of impurity as well, but this is holy food. I didn't make a coffin. I didn't make shrouds out of this money. I brought it to the Beis Hamikdash. I did everything you commanded me. What was it that you commanded me in addition to all that was already mentioned? Very important mitzvah, Rashi says. Samachti, I rejoiced. When a Jew gives tzedakah, he has to do so joyously. I rejoiced, v'simachti bay, and I brought joy to others. That is the whole idea of this, is that we have to have joy, and we have to bring joy to others. And now we finish with offering a prayer to Hashem. Hashkifa, gaze down, mim'ein kodshecha, from your holy habitation, min hashamayim, from heaven. We say to Hashem, look down at us from your condominium in the sky. Uvorech, and bless es amcha, your people, as Yisrael, Israel. V'eso adoma, and the land asher nosato lanu, that you've given us, the land of Israel, Eretz Yisrael. And by the way, our sages say that the word hashkifa, wherever it says hashkifa, vayashkef, that God gazed, it's not good. It usually doesn't talk about good stuff. God gazes and he punishes. It's never good. Why would we use the expression hashkifa when we're asking God for blessing? The answer is a very important lesson. Because here we're saying to Hashem, I want you to gaze down upon us. We have given tzedakah. We have given charity meticulously. We followed every rule. Therefore, in the merit of the tzedakah, even negative stuff should now be transformed and flipped to good stuff. And that's why we use the negative term here. Hashem, we gave tzedakah, make anything negative positive because of my tzedakah. That's the power of tzedakah. And that's the theme of many of the letters of the Alter Rebbe in the section of letters in Tanya, which we study. So again, Hashkifa, gaze down, Mimon Kochecha, from your holy dwelling, Min Hashamayim, from heaven, Uvorech, and extend blessing as Amcha to your people as Yisrael, Israel, Veso Adom, on the land, which you've given us, Kasher Nishbata Labeseinu, exactly as you have sworn to our forefathers. Hashem swore again and again to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob that he will bless the land that he gave us, Eretz Yisrael, that it will be Eretz, a land, Zovas, which flows, Chalav Udvash, with milk and honey. It will be a land of bounty, a land of plenty. So bless the economy in Eretz Yisrael. Hashkifa mimein kodshecha, asinu masha gozartu aleinu. We have done, Hashem, what you decreed upon us to do. Aseyato, now you should do, masha olech alas, is what you have to do. Shamarta, because remember you said in the beginning of the sections of the blessings in Vayikra and Leviticus, Im b'chulkeisai teilechu, that if you will study my Torah and keep my mitzvahs and follow my statutes, then v'nasati gishmeichem beitam, I will give your rain in its time. And there won't be drought and there won't be famine. And in a broader sense, the commentaries say that gishmeichem does not only mean rain, but it means gashmiut. I will give you your material needs in its time. So when a Jew says, I did tzedakah, now you give me my material needs. Asher nasata lonu, which you have given us. Kasher nishbata labeseinu, as you swore to our forefathers. Loses lonu, to give to us. V'kiyamta, and you had fulfilled this by giving us Eretz, Zovas, Cholav, Udvash, a land which flows with milk and honey. Okay. This is the end of today's Chumash portion.